Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast exploring life-changing career moves. I'm your host, Brian Aquart. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the bold decisions that transform their careers and lives. Let's dive in. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. Today, we have a powerhouse guest whose career evolution is nothing short of inspiring. Diane Forster is an award-winning TV host, producer, and an influential figure in the world of media and coaching. With over 40 years of experience in media, sales, and TV, Diane's journey took a bold turn when she transitioned from a successful career in ad sales to becoming an entrepreneur, coach, and mentor for aspiring TV hosts. Now, she's not only built a platform to empower others, but has made it her mission to help women amplify their voices and build their brands through television. Whether you're considering a career change, interested in the media world, or simply seeking motivation to make a big leap, this episode has something for you. Let's go check it out. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Diane Forster, a trailblazer in the media industry with an impressive background that spans TV, media, coaching, sales, and entrepreneurship. Diane is not only an award-winning host and producer, known for her work scouting talent for America's next top TV hosts, but she's also a passionate advocate for women's empowerment. Through her signature programs like the TV Star Host Academy, Diane guides women professionals, entrepreneurs, and executives to step confidently into the spotlight and become TV hosts. She's known as America's mindset coach for her powerful work in mindset and personal transformation. And her story of leaving a high-powered ad sales career to pursue her purpose is very inspiring, which is why she's here today. So I'm excited to have her here to share her journey and insights. So Diane, welcome to Why I Left. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so, before we really get into it, would love for you to just share a little bit about, your journey and what were some early experiences that really helped shape your career?
Well, I started out in the ad business at the age of 19. It was the summer between freshman and sophomore year of college, and I was hired as a temporary secretary, doing shorthand and typing. That was supposed to be a 2-week gig, and it turned into a 32-year career in advertising and television sales. I sort of stumbled into advertising and media. And once I had my foot in the door, I did account work for the first year or so, and then an opportunity came up to transition into the media department. And I started as a media assistant. I learned all the back end. I mean, we pulled ratings and shares and did all that by hand. And I slowly worked my way up to a media buyer. And then my 8 years in the business, I transitioned over to planning and account work and media supervising. So I've worked with some of the largest corporations in the world, big name brands, and small mom and pop shops too. So I really loved media. I had a natural knack for media buying. I could package really well and bring things in within budget. And then they'd send me out on new business pitches, and I'd land the account, and they'd send me out to the regional car meetings, and I'd come back with twice the budget, and just knew how. I just had this natural inclination to be able to communicate with people that, the value of what we would bring. And then I realized, well, I didn't want to stay on the agency side. That I saw that the sales side was way more fun. They were working less. They were making more money and having more fun. So when I met my former husband, we were dating long distance, and I moved from LA to Chicago, and I switched over to the television sales side of the business. And there I started out as a rep firm, repping about 15 stations across the country. And this was all TV now. And then I went over to Group W, which at the time was an owned and operated network of stations, 5 stations that Westinghouse owned. Westinghouse bought CBS, so we merged with them. And I wasn't happy with the dynamic. I had a new manager and things were shifting, and I got a call to go to work at ABC. So I jumped on the opportunity, and I spent 20 years working at ABC for the ABC owned and operated TV stations. And the year that I went there was the year that Disney bought ABC. So it was going through a lot of changes at the time. So yes, so I've had media in my blood for my entire life, and it's always really been focused around mostly television, which I love. And like I said, I stumbled into it. It wasn't my calling or anything. I just had a natural knack for it.
This incredibly diverse background, like you mentioned, spanning 40 years in media, sales, coaching, TV, all of these things. What would you say is like the common thread throughout these experiences that you've come to notice?
Well, I left the industry in 2015. I made a bold decision to reinvent my life, to do the coaching. And I did that for a variety of reasons. I was very unhappy in my life. At the time, I was in a toxic marriage, and I actually had a suicide attempt, which surprises so many people when they meet me and they know me, like you and yeah, me. And so what the common thread was in the reinvention process, taking what I learned through all those years of working in, amazing careers for amazing people, was that 7 of the 9 people I've ever worked for in my life either desperately tried to hire me back or successfully hired me back. Because the common thread, Brian, was excellence. It was excellence. It was always going above and beyond, doing a little bit more, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and just really having, that level of, the average is average and excellent is excellent. So if you're going to do something, do it with excellence. So that has definitely been the thread in my life, and it's served me over this past decade in inventing and, writing books and speaking, and the programs and the network that I'm building now has been, I don't do it like other people. I do it with that level of excellence. So it's always about that quality.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you sharing what you mentioned earlier about some of the transitions that led to this. And I think it's a nice kind of pivot into moving it from career to career. This work that you were doing in ad sales and media, very stable career, right? One of the things I love that you just mentioned was around this commitment to excellence. What I hear in that too is, because you talked about crossing the T's, dotting the I's, is an attention to detail, right? And so I think I could definitely see that. And, a lot of folks in the younger generation probably take a few lessons from that as well, right? And so now thinking about this transition, the stable career in ad sales, now to entrepreneurship, clearly it's a bold move. And we talk about a lot of these bold moves here on Why I Left. So when you think about that, what was the catalyst that made you decide to take that leap back in 2015?
I run a company called I Have Today. And there were a lot of people who gave me a lot of opinions about things they had no business giving me the opinions about. But I had spent so much of my life giving my best to somebody else's bottom line. And I had so much to say and so much to do. And the bathroom moment led to my awakening, that led to my calling, that led me down this path of something so beyond extraordinary. I could have never imagined 10 years ago. If you would have said to me 10 years ago, oh, you're going to reinvent your life. You're going to write books. You're going to speak. You're going to have a successful TV show. You're going to run a network and have all the things that have happened to me. I would have said, you're crazy. So the simplest way to say it to anyone out there is sometimes you do have to give up the good to get to the great. And it's interesting that you call it a stable career, because it's really not anymore. That really doesn't exist anymore. Things have changed so much. So I thought, if I could do all that for others, what could I potentially do for myself to take care of my goals and desires and my future? As an entrepreneur, there is no cap. You get a certain % salary raise every year. Not as an entrepreneur, the sky's the limit. So that one of the catalysts was, if I don't do this right now with this life that I have, when am I going to do it? Because if it's not now, when? And if it's not me, who's it going to be? So I took the big leap. I did.
And now thinking about that, what was the significant challenge in making such a transition? And how did you really overcome it?
I think the biggest challenge that entrepreneurs have who have left corporate is no longer getting a steady paycheck. having, working for something and knowing at the end of 2 weeks or the end of the week, that check is coming. You're now fully responsible for generating that money. And that is a mindset shift big time, which is why I focus on mindset so much. It's one of the things that I really studied. And so that was a huge adjustment. And I'll tell you that I have had tremendous successes and tremendous failures. I don't call them failures. I just call them growth opportunities along this journey. And so the challenge had been, you can't just ignore a broken bone or, something. You just can't ignore something that's not working. You have to focus the attention on it and master it and figure it out. As uncomfortable as it is, going to the gym for the first time, it's not comfortable. But if you keep doing it, you become more and more comfortable at it. But I've coached hundreds of women through reinvention. And it's the number one thing is the shift around generating their own income now. And it empowers some and it terrifies many because of their beliefs around money.
No, without a doubt. And, looking back, what's maybe the biggest lesson you learned from that decision to make this huge shift?
I've heard, hire slow, fire fast. I don't. I learn hire fast, fire fast. So I don't stay in anything that's uncomfortable. As soon as I start to get that gut feeling, I make a change. I don't allow, a great amount of time or money to be invested poorly into something. If I see it's not working, I make a change right away. That is the biggest lesson, that it's my business. I run it the way I want, and we're either aligned or we're not aligned, and not in a mean, vicious way. I just can tell that, you'd be better off, somewhere else. You'd be happier. And we need to create the space for the person who's actually right for this position, whether it's a in-house or it's an outsourced, fractional position. So that is one of the biggest lessons I learned, that because you are some of your team and the people around you.
No, I love that. That's great advice. Now I want to pivot into the launch and some of the work that you're doing. So you focus on empowering women to become TV hosts. So what really sparked this mission and what impact are you hoping to achieve?
Well, I got the vision of this back in 2013. The day I wrote the I Have Today poem, I knew I'd one day have a multimedia company focused on women. And so I started out as a mindset coach. And when the pandemic hit, I had a woman come to me and say, you know what? I just got some of this idle money and I want to hire you. I want you to teach me how to have a TV show like you do, because you do it different than everyone else. And I said, well, that's not really what I do. But then I remembered 2013 and I went, but wait a second, I'm game if you're game. And I knew it was the time. It was the universe telling me that it was time. And the reason why this is so unique and special and valuable for women, and I love men, by the way, I've helped many men launch TV shows, but our focus is on women, is women this age, there's a few things going on. So I will connect all these dots really quickly because this is part of packaging. This is what I'm talking about. How can we leverage and solve a lot of problems at once? Okay, so there's a world out there of women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that I call the second chapter of their lives. That was me, 46 years old, depressed and suicidal, not anything really wrong. I had to have it all life. I just wasn't happy with the life that I had. There's a lot of women out there who are going through transitions again who need support. I know what I needed. I knew what I needed, and then I knew what I didn't, some of the things I didn't know I needed. There were many things around that I didn't realize, wow, I really need this. So keep that point in mind, that there's this audience waiting for incredible experience and knowledge and wisdom and stories from other women who've traveled the journey ahead of them. So they're rescues waiting to save people. Then I had all this experience behind the scene in television. Remember, I was a buyer and a salesperson. So I know the television industry from the back end, from programming, from marketing and sales. And while I wasn't in front of the camera, I'd been around TV enough to learn a lot. And so I knew that I needed to start a TV show as a life and mindset coach in order to stand out in a very crowded industry. So when I did that, I said, okay, I need to help other women do this, because the way I teach it, Brian, is not just here's how to have a TV show. It's here's how to have a personal brand and a business that is uniquely you using a television show as your main marketing tool because it's the most respected medium in the world and you can get the most leverage out of it. So that started it. I built the academy. We have 12 successful hosts and many other people who've gone through it and launched shows. And here we are.
I love the focus, right? That you call it the second stage in life, right? I love
chapter.
That focus.
Mm-hmm.
Second chapter. Yeah, no, I love that. Now, so someone comes to you. Could you walk us through maybe the steps you use to help them, especially someone without prior experience, in launching their own TV show?
So the first thing we do, it's a STAR method, STAR, and the S stands for strategy. And strategy is the most important thing that most people overlook. They think, oh, I got a great idea for a business or a product or a service. And they dive in deep and there's always competition. There is, and that's healthy. That means that there's a market. But your goal, first and foremost, before you write the book or write the speech or do anything, create the business, is to discover your unique +ability. You have to figure out the thing that is going to make you stand out, especially in a world of AI right now, where AI can take care of 90+% of skills, hard skills, but it's the soft skills that really matter. So people buy people first. And so I take them through a process where we really develop who they are and what makes them unique. And then from that unique ability list, we develop their top 5-star qualities. From there, we determine what is their core anchor, that thing that they're going to be known for. And from there, we build their business. So we build their brand. We build their TV show, we build their business. So all of those things all work together and it's very sequential. It happens super quick. You should see them light up. Once they get clear, they can articulate who they are very, very clearly to people and people can understand, oh, this is how she can help me. This is how she can serve me. It's an amazing process. Everybody loves this process. Yeah.
Any success stories that you're able to share that you don't mind sharing with the audience?
I don't mind sharing you. Look at my ladies right here. You can see some of them.
Oh, nice.
So every one of these women 3 to 6 months ago did not have TV shows. They all do now. This process works for everybody. It doesn't matter what your field, what your niche, what your area of expertise, what your age, what your background. None of it matters. People get fearful when they say, oh, I can't be on TV. Oh, yes, you can. You have everything you need already, but what you need are 2 things. You need the right strategy and the right structure. And I help you build it all out. And so they absolutely love it. Yes, success stories, people making a lot more money, getting paid to speak. They're starting to do collaborations. Their shows are getting thousands and thousands of views instead of 10 or 20 hits on a social media platform. And what we're building is we're building literally a television network. So it's really been a lot of fun seeing this come to life. Yeah.
I love that. And look, I'm no stranger to shameless plugs, but if any of those women and their success stories, maybe they left a job to start their TV show, you know where to send them. Okay.
Yes,
you know where to
of
forward
course. Absolutely.
Yes. I'd love to chat.
Yeah. We have one woman that's coming in and she's at her job and her goal is within this next year that she's able to transition out. So I will send her your way.
I love that. I love that. So let's, one of the things I love that you mentioned about, pivoting into this entrepreneurship space is that it takes a lot of work. And that one, and I've had a few entrepreneurs, solopreneurs come on the show and talk about how, everything is on you. At times there's unexpected challenges that people who may be getting into this space aren't aware of. What's something that you did not anticipate about entrepreneurship and how did you handle it?
I think in the beginning, Brian, I thought it would happen faster than it did. I think that I anticipated within 3 years, I'll be making millions, So I didn't anticipate as many bumps, I'll say. And yet I'm so grateful for them. So if you're somebody I leaped. I took the major leap. I just walked away from everything. Sold, quit my, high paying job, sold my house, got my twins off to college, moved cross country, literally started over. And I planned for it. Believe me, I planned and saved for a year. I think it would have been maybe better or different. Who knows? if I had transitioned. So started getting certified as a coach while I was still working, starting some of the things while I was still working instead of the way I did it. Now, I had a product that I invented. So I had that to be able to sell, that was featured on QVC. That was actually my entryway into entrepreneurship. But make sure that it's something that you love, because you're going to be quote unquote, working harder than you ever have in your life. But I work harder than I ever have in my life, but I love it. And it moves me every single day. So get aligned with that passion and your purpose and your vision and your mission. Do it from the mission perspective versus the money perspective. Never do it for the money. The money will find you when it's through mission.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the product from QVC? You mentioned it there. Like what was that, and how did it get really springboard everything?
I was making deviled eggs in the kitchen on an Easter Sunday, getting ready to go visit with family. And I went to put the finishing touch of paprika on the beautiful piped eggs I'd made, because I love to cook and bake and entertain, and too much spice came out and ruined my dish in 1 second. So I saw this flash in my mind of this sifting spoon that had a long handle and a tiny little sifting bowl and a tapping edge where I could stick it in the spice jar or the bag and then just tap it where I wanted it to go. So it was a finishing tool. And I set out on this quest to find it, and I couldn't find it. And a voice whispered in my ear, Diane, you need to create it. So I created it, and I didn't know what I was doing. This is part of the path. Sometimes all you need is that next step, that first step. And so I was smart. I told people about it, asked them if they knew anyone in the business. They did. He became my mentor, and he gave me the guidance that I now give others. What's that next step? What's that next step? So, it went from concept to QVC, where we sold out in 6 minutes. So yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That is awesome.
So I did have that, and I thought, if I could invent the spifter, something out of nothing, what else could I create? So I had a level of success that allowed me to take that leap even further.
And it's still out there, I would imagine.
Yeah. We sell it on Amazon. Yep. And on our website. Yeah, we do.
I love that. So now I would love for you to share some advice with our listeners. As you know, look, a lot of folks who listen to this show either may be contemplating a career change themselves or have gone through it and, looking for advice and some wisdom and guidance as they enter into these next steps. So for those folks who may be considering this major career change or stepping into entrepreneurship, what advice would you give them to start preparing for that journey right now?
Really start keeping a journal. Get a fresh notebook that is full of your ideas, full of your visualizations. So here's the thing. If you're thinking, you're in the past. Your brain operates as a database. So when you're thinking, it's pulling on the past. When you're visualizing and you're in imagination, you are in the future. You're actually creating it. Now, the subconscious can't tell the difference between those two things. So you've got to really get a clear, I call it future intending. You've got to be able to see what that life is like from not just the grand, end result, but what it's like in the day-to-day life of living that life. What are you doing in this career? In your entrepreneurial journey? Who are you serving? What does your day look like? Are you working from home? Are you commuting? Are you traveling? What is it like? And really get into that space before you make any moves. You've got to feel it, because you're going to create whatever it is you focus on. And so if you're doing it because you just want to get out of here because you can't stand it, without really getting clear on why you're doing it, what you want and why you want it, you're going to drag that experience into the next. Doesn't matter if it's a job or your own thing. You're going to drag that with you. So the reason why you want to make the change is you want the peace of mind and the freedom and the safety. Those are the three things that we want. Everybody wants them. When you drill it all down, the $1 million, why? Peace of mind, freedom and safety. Those are the things that you want. So what is a life of doing what you want to do, having peace of mind, freedom and safety look and feel like? That's your first thing. As you start journaling, do this every day, morning or night, whenever. I used to do it on the train all the time. I get on the train to go to work, and I would do this. And you got to become it to become it. That's what it takes. You must become it first before you can become it. It's not a when then situation. Well, when I have this, then I'll be happy. No, you actually have to become it first. So anyone who's thinking about doing this, listen to what I'm telling you. I know what I'm talking about. I've helped so many women reinvent their lives very, very quickly. They got clear on this first. They had to know what they wanted and why they wanted it. I worked with a woman once. In 90 days, she had 9 things on the list. She got them all, every single one of them, because she knew what she wanted and why she wanted it. So it's not that I don't want this thing anymore. You have to get clear on what you do want.
Your main focus is helping women over 40 reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
Does the advice change for those folks in their second chapter of life?
I don't think the advice changes really for anyone. You know what I'm seeing a lot? Cause I'm on TikTok a lot. I'm everywhere. I'm looking around and seeing what's going on, and I got a pretty decent following there. But what I'm seeing a lot of is young people in their 20s who are really, I heard a woman say, this beautiful woman saying, I'm failing at life. I'm working at a job that I don't like. I'm not in a relationship, and she literally is looking at her life like, I'm failing at life, because people think that life is out there. And like I said, if you have to become it to become it, because if your life isn't coming from you, it's happening to you. So I think it's a variety of ages, but the reason why I focus on women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, that chapter, is it's the highest rate of depression and anxiety is this age group, women in this age group. It's not the youth. It's not men. And prior to the pandemic, it was the number one age group for suicide attempts, not successes, but attempts. And it's because so much transition is happening at this time, and trapped trauma from childhood, youth, teen years has not been resolved. Now they spent the next 20 years giving their best to somebody else, giving it to their spouse, giving it to their job, giving it to their kids. Now all of a sudden, empty nesting happens, a lot of divorces happen, and the awakening happens like it did for me. Like, is this all there is? Isn't there more? I thought I'd be happier. And so all of those things come into play. And in this age time, that's when all that trapped trauma from the past comes bubbling back up again. So this is why it's so important. These women are brilliant, but they're scared, they're afraid, and they're dealing with trapped trauma. And so when I see young people dealing with this, I'm so grateful they have a platform to express it instead of keeping it all to themselves. This is a wake-up call for the world. It's not just these women. That just happens to be who I'm focusing on, little old me, but it's epidemic everywhere, Brian, really. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. And I think platform, social media in general, right? TikTok especially, but wherever there's that short form video content, you see that people are much more comfortable in having these types of conversations. I found people on Instagram and TikTok, talking about them leaving their jobs. But yes, I've been down the path too, where there are individuals who are talking about how their lives aren't what they thought they would be, and they're much younger than you and I, right? And so I am also glad, to your point, and I didn't think about it like this, like I'm glad there is a platform that exists, one, for that, but two, that people are feeling much more comfortable now in expressing this. Because then you see, and don't get me wrong, social media can be a horrible place for some things, right? But you do see a lot of support at times in the comments about how that individual is not alone, right? And then you hear the story sharing. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah. And so what we do with long form content is we do it in a way that's, informative. It's information, it's education, it's inspiration, but it's also entertainment at the same time. So most of the viewers of my TV show, I have 120,000 viewers of my show now. I'm beating 5 of the top 10 daytime TV talk shows in numbers. Like there's a market for this. But what they're doing is they're the 10-foot viewer. They're sitting at home on their couch watching me on their big screen TV. binge watching. So they can relax into the content. And it's always uplifting. It's always motivational. And there's always something for her or him, because we have a lot of men that watch my show too, that they're instant actionable things they could do right now to change their lives for the better. So it's a way to get off the social media platform and into something that you can really digest and really have it integrate, because we need that. There's so much garbage on TV, as we know as well, so much mindless and just terrible stuff. So that's what we are all about. We're committed on our network to be able to provide so much great information and resources on so many different topics and levels.
I love that. And fun fact, most of my viewership on YouTube and Apple, those are the two places that I get a lot of traction, are women.
Yeah.
Women 18 to 35 or 18 to 34 is what the demo says. But I think it's probably more so like maybe 25 to 34, right? Because that, 18 to 34, and then it goes like 35 to 56. I think I'm like right there in the middle. But a lot of the viewers who watch my show and listen to my show are actually women, which I found very surprising as well. But there's a need for the content, right? There is an interest in the content. So what you're sharing is very valuable. So I'd love to hear that as well. So looking forward to what Diane has next, right? So what type of impact are you hoping to have in the future?
I mean, we say it. We're on mission to touch the lives of 1 billion women who don't know their self-worth, to discover their true divinity, power, and purpose. And so we're about making big impact. Of course, I can't do it alone, which is why I'm creating a network of women. And we have different levels of media that we're going to be offering. And I'm in the middle of writing a book that's coming out next year about this very process that's called Star Power, about you really identifying that your unique ability and your gifts out there so that you can put it out there in a way that really serves the world. And it creates that creator economy, creates your legacy, creates that freedom that, everybody's really seeking. So, we have to be self-sufficient. No matter if you work at a job or not, figuring out a way to create your own economy is the best thing that you can do for yourself. Yeah. Yeah. My twins are in the process of doing that right now.
And so would love to flip the mic for a moment and ask you, well, what's one question you have for me that I could hopefully answer?
Oh, you'll be able to answer this, because I ask all my guests this question. What do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that the division in the world is truthfully artificial, right? We are much more connected and alike than we want to give ourselves credit for. And so I wish more people not only knew that, but even if they have an inkling of it, that they actually believed it, because it is true. And I think about this. Look, I'm in a very specific niche here with my show around job exits and job transitions. And across the globe, you hear these similar themes start popping up. And I'd love to see that, because what I think is that, and it may be dramatic, but I genuinely believe that this show is almost like a microcosm of a whole bunch of other things. We are all going through fill in the blank type of issue. How we've handled it at times may have been positive, may not have been, right? Job transitions, how that's impacted us, the thought process going through that, the fear that's associated with it. Everybody across gender, race, religion, we can relate to that. And so I hope that everybody knew that these lines of division, right? Truthfully, they're artificial.
Well said. That was beautiful. And no one's ever said that before on my show. So I love it.
Oh, I like that. Good.
Yeah,
good deal. Good
that
deal.
Was good.
Thank you. Well, Diane, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I'm glad that, we connected on LinkedIn. Your story, your openness, your vulnerability during today's conversation, I just really appreciate that. And I also appreciate just learning about you and your work. And so we'd love for you to share where our listeners can find you and support some of the work that you're doing, and all those successful women who are now starting their own TV shows. So where can they find all of that?
The easiest place for you to go is to go to my website, Diane Forster, and it's DianeForster. Lots of people put in 2 R's and an E, and no. So DianeForster.com, because everything I do is on that page. It's super simple and to navigate, and it'll lead you directly to the show, to my 2 podcasts, to speaking opportunities, to free gifts. We do a free assessment for you, to see how TV ready you are. So it's a great survey if you want to explore that. And my books are there and everything is there. That's the easiest place. Now, if you want to watch the network, our network, you would go to e360tv.com, e360tv.com. And when you get there, you just scroll down to I Have Today TV and you can catch all our shows there.
Thank you for that info. And look, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank Diane Forster for joining me today. I'll share all of her information as well as the TV network's information in our show notes. And I hope you all have a great week. These types of discussions are so impactful. And so I hope you all continue to get a lot out of them. So Diane, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for listening to Why I Left. Join us next time for more inspiring stories about growth, resilience, and transformation. Visit us online at www.whyiLeft.co. That's whyiLeft.co. And subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Alive Podcast Network. See you soon.